Hi, David here, and welcome back to the channel where we're looking at the automatic writings of early 20th century medium James Padgett. In last Wednesday's video, we looked at a message James received from Judge Cyric, whom James met a few months prior to Frank Cyric's passing to spirit. And he explained what things were like for him during the first few months of being in spirit. In this video, we're going to look at someone else's experience of passing over. This time an acquaintance of James is called Joe Shellington. Joe did manage to contact James through a medium, asking James to contact Joe's family and tell them that he had been in touch. But as we'll see, James didn't act on that request, possibly because he was unsure of their reaction if he did. I must admit, I've been in exactly that situation myself, of being asked to relay a message and thinking, really? But sometimes you have to be brave, although it can be sensible to choose your moment. Certainly, if someone is in the process of grieving and you're unsure how a communication from someone now in spirit would be received, I think most of us would be wary of intruding. The interesting thing about this message is that we get to see this problem from the perspective of the person in spirit. The message from Joe begins, "I am here, Joe Shellington. I am glad to be able to write to you and let you know that I am in the land of the living. I have waited a long time to write you, as your band would not consent to my writing, so I had to wait until it was agreeable to them, as well as with you." Quite often in the communications to James, giving him advice on how to proceed, we see his spirit band advising him against contact with certain spirits, often because their assessment is that the influence of that spirit would not be helpful to James's own development. For quite a long period, James was in the habit of sitting to answer questions from people in spirit who were in a state of darkness, and he undoubtedly helped a great many people by doing this. But there are times when his spirit band attempt to reduce the amount of time he spends doing this. So if James's spirit band have intervened to make Joe wait for a time, this might be our first hint that perhaps Joe isn't in the best place in spirit. And he soon goes on to confirm this, saying, "I am in a state of semi-darkness and am suffering somewhat from the recollections of my life on earth. And thanks to your wife, I am commencing to see the light and to learn the way out of my sufferings." So again, we see James's wife, Helen, busy at work in spirit. And we do see confirmation that Joe is in need of guidance. Joe goes on to describe his actual passing. "When I found myself dying, I thought that I was going to sleep, and that my body was resting from the cares and pains which my sufferings had caused. And when my spirit was separated from my body, I hovered around for a long time, expecting that when my body should feel refreshed, I would go into it again and continue my life on earth. But after waiting a long time and failing to see my body awaken, I commenced to wonder what had taken place, and at last came to the conclusion that I was dead, and that no more would I walk the earth as a mortal. Well, as soon as I realized that fact and looked around and saw my mother and father and several others that I knew on earth, and they told me that I had died and was now a spirit and would never more go into my body." This is interesting. As soon as Joe has realized for himself that he has died, this is the point that his parents and others come forward to him, attracted by that thought. We saw something similar in last week's video, 2.6, with Frank Cyric, where the realization of what has happened creates the opening for others to come forward. Time and again we see that the presence of those whose guidance is beneficial is not forced upon us. I suppose there are two lessons here. First, if you seek helpful guidance from spirit, accept that you need to ask for it, because then you have made and expressed a clear choice, which means that those coming forward know that they are not interfering with your free will. Secondly, be wary of those in spirit who seek to influence without being invited. So to return to Joe's account of his death, after his parents and others have come forward in response to his realization that he is, as he puts it, in the other land of the living, he tells us that I commenced to ask questions and wanted to know where I was and what place I was in. They told me that I was in the spirit world and in what is called the first sphere, and that my future home would be in that sphere until I had, by repentance and suffering, progressed to a higher one. As I've mentioned in previous videos, most people passing from the earth life find themselves in the second sphere. The first sphere is often called the earth planes of spirit, and is the closest to the conditions of this physical world, and has various planes extending from those who have made very little spiritual development through to those who have been downright evil. So we have another confirmation that Joe has some work to do ahead of him. That said, whatever is in his past that has put him there, he is by no means among the worst. He tells us that my mother, who is a very beautiful spirit, tried to comfort me and told me that I now must think of the things that belong to the spirit world and not let my thoughts run on the things that I had been interested in as a mortal. And while I considered her advice and was impressed with what she said, I could not follow her advice, as I was compelled by something which I did not understand to give my thoughts to the affairs of earth, and especially to my wife and daughter. I was with them nearly all the time for many long days, and tried to speak to them and advise them what they should do, but they would not pay any attention to me. Of course, I know now that they did not know that I was present, and did not hear my voice, but at the time I thought it very strange, for they were just as real and unchanged to me as when I was with them in the body. I never fully realized what my position was until long months after I died, and I could not think of anything except my loved ones at first, and was with them all the time. I saw them sorrowing and weeping because of my death, and tried so hard to comfort them, but all to no purpose. I at last saw that it was utterly hopeless for me to make them feel that I was with them, and so I sought for information among my spirit friends to know how I could reach my dear ones. I got no consolation, as they told me that it was only through the instrumentality or help of some earth medium that I could ever be able to communicate with them, or let them know that I was still alive and loved them just as I did when on earth. So Joe is really struggling to move on from this world and make a start on the work that is in front of him in terms of working to improve his own spiritual condition. That might seem a strange thing to say to someone so clearly attached to his family. He's clearly not devoid of human feeling, so isn't all bad. However, two things I guess we can say. Hovering around his family, trying to make himself known to them, is understandable, but it takes him a long time to realize that this is doing neither him nor them any good. He's achieving nothing in terms of helping them to move on, and he's holding himself back in the process. Joe's mother has advised him to start prioritizing the things of the spirit world rather than remaining preoccupied with what's going on in the physical world. That might seem unfeeling, After all, he's only trying to comfort his grieving family. But from the perspective of someone who's been in spirit a bit longer, Joe is putting off doing anything to improve his own condition in spirit. If he were to take his mother's advice, not only would he attain a happier condition, but his opportunities for having a beneficial effect upon his wife and daughter would increase in ways that at present he is unaware of. And looking at the longer term, the more progress he makes meantime, the more help he can be to them when they eventually pass to spirit. At the moment, Joe is reliant on others for help, which he keeps hoping for. So one time in my wanderings, I entered the circle of the medium where you heard me talk to you, and then I was happy because I thought that then I would be able to reach my wife and daughter. But I was disappointed, for you never told them that I had talked to you, and wanted them to know that I was anxious to talk to them. I suppose you thought that they would not believe you, and so you neglected to tell them. But you were mistaken in this, as they would have believed you had you told them. My wife knows something of spiritualism, though she has not much faith in it, and while she may not absolutely have believed, yet she would have had enough interest to have sought for the opportunity to learn more, and if possible to hear me speak to her. So while you disappointed me, I cannot altogether blame you. Old friend, do not fail to let her know that I have written to you tonight, and if it is not too much trouble, I would like for you to send her a copy of this message. I still love her, and am with her very often, and try my best to make her feel my presence, and realize that I am doing my best to comfort her. If she only knew how dear she is to me, and that my whole heart burns with love for her, she would be happier, for I believe that she will be mine when she comes over, and through all eternity. So do not fail to send her a copy of this message. So there's a number of things going on here. We see the disappointment Joe feels when James doesn't pass on the message. He's been waiting for an opportunity to communicate through a medium, and when he gets that opportunity, it proves fruitless. But we also see that Joe understands James' reluctance, so he doesn't entirely blame him. But still, in the background, we have the work waiting for Joe if he is to move on from his preoccupation with the earthly life he has lived and improve upon his own spiritual condition. It's almost as though his preoccupation with his earthly family is a kind of displacement activity, if that's not being too unkind. The next section of Joe's message shows us a little more of the tricky situation he is in. When I passed over, I was not one particle afraid, and while I was not just in condition to know what was taking place, yet there was no dread or apprehension in any way of my being harmed. I arose, as I have said, from my body, and did not leave it, but stayed with it, and with my loved ones, even till it was buried, and then I continued with my dear wife. After I realized that I was a spirit, I found myself in a dark atmosphere, surrounded by dark spirits who I supposed were like myself. My mother, while she often came to me, did not live with me, for as she told me, lived in a higher sphere where much happiness exists. I was not happy, and I suffered very much from my recollections of my earth life, and had no fixed home. All spirits in a condition like mine have to roam about with no place that they can call home. Often I have longed for a home, but found none, and even now I have one that is not very beautiful. I am progressing, and light is coming to me, and my sufferings are decreasing. I rather expected to find myself in hell, as I was not a Christian, and as I was taught that all who are not Christians and do not believe in Jesus must go to hell. But I have not seen this hell, and I do not believe that there is any such place. Yet the suffering which we have creates a hell enough for any spirit who wants such a hell. We've seen in previous videos, including last week's 2.6, that the suffering we undergo, if we undergo it, is caused by our own conscience. There is nowhere in spirit that is a place of either external or eternal punishment. We are our own judges. It's just that we're in a place where we can't pretend anymore that we are better than we are. In a lot of the messages given to James Padgett, his spirit communicators refer to the hells of spirit. And that's not always helpful language, because what they mean by it is not a place of punishment imposed by God or anyone else. It is a place that reflects our true nature, so as to make us aware of the full extent of who we truly are. As Joe says, he has never seen anywhere like the hell taught of in traditional Christianity and other religious traditions. He knows enough to realize that he is in a state of suffering that he has created for himself. Is Joe stuck there forever? No, of course not. There are two ways forward. One is to undergo the process of gradual purging that we have seen described in previous videos. The other is to seek God's love, by which I mean share in that love, so that our natural human nature is gradually transformed into the divine nature. This pathway is the one we focus on in the Sunday videos, although mention of it seems to creep into most of the messages James received. And it is almost certainly this pathway that James's wife Helen has been trying to explain to Joe. And it seems she has met with some success, because he tells us, well, I am now learning to pray to God and to believe in his love. And the more I pray, the stronger my belief becomes. The more light I see, and the less I suffer. Your wife came to me at about the time I spoke to you at the mediums and tried to help me. And she has been with me many times since and has helped me very much. She is a beautiful spirit and seems filled with the love of God, as she says. So I am seeking that love, and I believe that I will soon get enough of it to get out of my present condition. I thank you so much for this opportunity, and when it is agreeable, I will come and write to you again. I will not take up more of your time tonight. So with my kindest regards, and many thanks, I am your old friend, Joe Shellington. So we see quite a familiar trajectory as we work through this message. We see Joe not expecting to die, undergoing death, painless as always, taking his time to realize that he is dead, meeting familiar faces, including his parents, being told to turn his thoughts to his new environment and the need for his own spiritual development, ignoring that advice for a time, remaining preoccupied with the life and people he has left behind, then gradually coming to terms with what has happened, where he is and who he is. By the end of the message, as a result of taking on board what he has been told and applying it, we see someone who now has hope and the real expectation of an improvement in his condition. Joe might have plenty in his background that places him in an ugly place, but he hasn't been abandoned. It's important to realize that God's love extends to everyone. I know that many of us struggle with that because we so often think in earthly terms of wanting visible punishment meted out to those who do wrong. But the reality is that God looks at every single one of us with an eye to what will turn us into the beautiful souls we can be. God doesn't punish, and he certainly doesn't do it for the sake of giving satisfaction to those who wish to see punishment. But we are wired so as to be our own judge, even the very worst of us. No one escapes this. Unless we are ourselves lacking, this is all the satisfaction we need. In the next video in this midweek series, video 2.8, I'll be taking you through 3 fairly short messages from people who knew James Padgett during their Earth lives, including a follow-up message from George Harvey, whom we first met back in the second message we looked at in video 2.2, and who was also struggling to find his way. The next video in the Divine Love series will be video 10.7 this coming Sunday, when we'll be looking at a message that concludes the one we looked at in video 10.6 about Jesus' childhood. So I hope you'll join me for one or other of those. As always, if you've enjoyed this video, please do like it, as it does help to introduce the channel to others. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care till then. Bye-bye.